Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode, wherever in the world you are listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on. As always, thank you guys so much for the support, the messages, the emails, the questions. Keep sending those our way. Really appreciate that, and excited that you're here joining us here for another episode. I think that this one is like a perfect off-season episode, as many of us as coaches, assuming you're not coaching a spring sport or in the summer, are kind of in their off-season mode a little bit, thinking, doing some reflection, kind of gearing up a little bit for next year as well. And I wanted to use this time and have a guest on to kind of talk about this topic about finding new ways to learn things and the process of kind of reflecting and trying to get new information in, finding new ways to implement things, ways that as coaches we can make sure that we're always growing, adapting, listening to what's out there, learning from what's out there, and then taking that and putting it into our practice. So this is a really good episode, I think, for some reflection, for some discussion just on growing ourselves as coaches and making sure that we're always being the best coaches that we can for our players. So we're going to go dive into this topic here about new ways to learn things, reflection, and all that good stuff. So very happy to have my guest on here today to discuss this topic. He is the boys basketball coach in Shawnee High School out in Oklahoma. Coach Eric Litherland is joining us today. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. How are we doing?
Hey, doing good, Coach. Appreciate it.
Coach, let's go ahead and get started with your basketball journey and your coaching journey. Where's the game taking you, and what was the ride, or what were the steps that got you out to Shawnee?
Oh, I'm a high school graduate of Shawnee High School here, east of Oklahoma City. Back in '97, basketball. I played basketball my whole life. Had an opportunity to coach. Started actually early volunteering in the Y when I was in high school. Had a chance to coached freshman while I was finishing up my college degree at OBU here in Shawnee, and it's taken quite a journey. I've been an assistant for several years and head coach at several schools, varying in sizes and demographics and things like that. I've enjoyed working camps in my off time. I've worked camps all over the country, as far down as Brownsville, Texas, as far east as Connecticut University. So it's been a ride. It's been a ride.
What's the experience like going to Shawnee, where you're an alumni from? Was it kind of like a surreal feeling, like being there as the head boys basketball coach? Did it feel like just like home when you stepped foot there? What was that like?
It was great. I always knew that I would love to have an opportunity to coach at my alma mater, and had an opportunity to do that a couple of years ago, and it's good. I mean, like I always tell everybody, it's more than a job. Because you've spent several years. I mean, the school's been huge for my whole family. My wife graduated from there. All three of my sisters graduated. My in-laws graduated. And we've lived in the community for pretty much our whole life. Yeah, I mean, and I've got two boys. They're in the school system here, and one's fixing to be a freshman next year, and the other one will be a fifth grader, and they're hoopers too. And I mean, it's awesome. And Shawnee's done a good job of updating their facilities. We have probably some of the best facilities east of Oklahoma City, and it's a great place to compete. One of the guys on our schedule this year was the Gatorade Player of the Year, 6'10" kid going to OSU. So I mean, we get to play against the best. And it's a great place. I mean, just trying to get the place rolling.
Facilities a little bit different than when you were playing?
Oh, 100%. Yes. Yes. The facility I played in was in the middle of town. It wasn't on campus. Actually, that place is shut down now due to possible roof failure, but they have a really nice gym now. We host a lot of Oklahoma playoff games through various classes, Class A, 2A to 4A. It's a really nice facility, and it's on campus. Well, we didn't have that when I was in school there.
Awesome. No, that sounds great. Always love when the investment and the money is put into those sort of things, because it just makes it that much better for our players to have, really nice facilities, and that's kind of stuff that they can take pride in.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's a definitely a key component these days. When other schools are competing for kids, and our district does a great job. They put up really nice. I mean, I think they're just a key component here and there from having the best facilities all around this side of the state. So I can't complain there.
Big shout out there. What's the district?
Yeah.
Want to make sure you shout them out. What district is that?
Shawnee Public Schools.
Awesome.
We're a turf football field away. I mean, we host the state championship in baseball every year. We just got a brand new video board on the baseball field. The baseball field is top notch, anyways. Our softball facility is great. Wrestling facility is one of the best in the state. I mean, really, honestly, we're about a turf football field, maybe an update in the press box away from, hosting anything and everything we want. And when it comes up on high school athletic, big time games.
That's fantastic. That's awesome.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, you are also a basketball parent as well, and so you have kind of the unique opportunity to kind of see what the game looks like, trying to raise some children through it, with everything that's going on, and how basketball has so many options, especially with the AAU scene and everything, and so many different things that are happening out there. So I'm just kind of curious about what has your experience been looking at the game through the lens of like a basketball parent. Like, what have you kind of learned about like the way AAU operates and the way like everything's looking at how are things maybe different than maybe you expected as you're raising kids to be basketball players in this current environment?
Oh man, I'm telling you, about 3 or 4 years ago, I didn't know much about AAU ball. My 8th grade kid we started to try to get him into some travel ball his 4th grade year, and it was a eye-opening learning experience. It's a lot different than your school structured ball in terms of people and their roles on teams and what they're hoping to have for their kids versus like at a high school or something like that where probably team is more centered. I think on the AAU circuit, it's definitely a lot more individual centered. Not always, but for the most part, I think parents come in with they're trying to get their kids as much experience exposure as they possibly can. But it's been an eye-opening experience. I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of good people too, and some crazy ones. I mean, definitely in the AAU brings out the crazies out of a lot of people. But I guess kind of where I can see now, and I spent the last 4 years, is a lot of those crazies are now starting to filter in your high school programs, and I think that's you're starting to see a little bit more of that AAU behavior seep into the high school setting and culture, and that's a little alarming. It's a little bit of a challenge as a head high school coach as well.
So if you had to give advice to anyone listening out there who maybe is going to be, raising kids and looking at options for AAU, and any advice that you would give them if they're navigating this for the very first time, trying to figure out an AAU program for their son or daughter?
So my kids, fortunately, unfortunately, has played for several programs, and honestly, I think probably what I would do, I know a lot of parents want to get, especially as they get closer to the 15U, 16U, 17Us, the big buzzword is the shoe teams, right? I mean, the ones that are the Nike sponsors. Yes. And there's a ton of circuits around there. I guess my advice would be to try to find a program, one, where you're going to have a coach that's not just going to yell. I guess this is where I have a little bit more background in just watching coaches. I mean, do they coach? Do they coach, or are they just yell because they think yelling is coaching? Or are your kids going to get something? I check out their practices. I mean, I've taken my kids to a couple program practices. You don't have to commit there. They can just come out there and see how the practices are handled. I mean, do they have things that build up, or do they just play 5-on-5? They just play 5-on-5. I'm not sure how much your kid's going to get out of that, but do they do like some sort of individual build up drills that go into small sided games like 3-on-3, 4-on-4, or like what kind of concepts are they trying to put into the kids is. And then I would also just look at your role. I mean, as a parent, I've seen AU teams that have 12, 13 kids on roll on their roster, and a kid sitting a lot. I mean, I don't know. With the expense of AAU now these days, where you're probably having to pay $30, $45. Right. I mean, like, and if I mean, I've coached some AAU. I'm actually going to direct one of the prep hoops circuit events in a couple of weeks in Oklahoma City for the high school division. It's going to be like $30, $45 for the weekend to get in. And if your kids, if your mom, dad, and a sibling comes in, I mean, you're talking $150 to watch you sit, or maybe for 60, 70%. So of the game, I don't know if that's in the best interest of the kid. I mean, like I'd rather see my kid get out there and get some minutes, play against as good of people as you can, but also in the position where they'll have a chance to play.
Yeah, they need to play, right? That's the whole point, is that they're out there playing.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Yep, I agree.
Wow. Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think that, you have to think about the fact that, like, you want to have them on these, these shoe teams or these shoe circuits, to be seen, but at the same time, if they're never going to play, then nobody's watching them anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, I get, like, you could be, 6th, 7th person or 8th person, where I like on my high school team, I'm pretty good at playing 8. My normal rotation is 8. Like, if you're 1 through 8, you're going to play. Now, past 8, it's here and there, and I know. It wouldn't hurt to be 6th man on a really good team, or 7th man. Some coaches may be there looking at some guys, and they know they don't have a chance at the big guys, but maybe you get in there and catch someone's attention, maybe a mid-major, something like that, if you're on. But to be 10 or 11 on that, I don't know if that's any better than being, a starter on maybe the next circuit down, where you get a chance to get out there, showcase your skills and things like that. I don't know. I think as a parent, you have to weigh that, especially with the investment you're going to make with traveling and things like that. I mean, it's a commitment. That's one thing I'm learning. It is a commitment.
Yeah,
it's hard. It's hard to, if you're not committed, that's a lot of money to be thrown around. So
at the very least, they need to be playing. If you're going to put that much money in, is kind of what I'm getting. Make sure that they're out there playing.
Or at least have a chance to compete. I mean, even if it's one of those things where, every other game, I mean, the coach gives them a shot, to start or something like that, where, maybe they have 7 or 8 really good dudes, and he wants to mix up the lineup and things like that. That's fine. I mean, try to balance it out a little bit. But I helped out with an event last weekend, and I saw some teams that had 10 deep rosters, and kids got off the bench for 4 minutes out of 28-minute stop clock event, and I just don't know how much better they got, and that's a question. I don't know. I mean, as a parent, how much better did my kid get playing 4 minutes, or would he be better suited at? But then again, you don't want to also take your kid and jump on 6 different teams in a season either. That's kind of where I would go back to the practice.
Do your
where
homework.
Their roles would be. Right. Yeah, as a parent, being involved, don't just stick them on a team, because of friends, or my friends play on this team, so I want to play. I'd put them on the best situation, with coaches, and where your kid will have the best opportunity to grow.
Yeah, and I think
because as coaches, I mean, we want to see our teams grow. I was going to say, as coaches, you want to see your team grow as players.
Yeah. With that being so much of an investment, I think if you are a coach too, if you're like a basketball parent who's also a basketball coach, man, you owe it to yourself to have to be out there and, looking at their practices and looking at what these guys are actually learning. Like if you know the game well, like go out there and do your homework and actually talk to these AAU coaches and see what they're running and make sure it fits in with like what you personally believe as a coach and as a parent.
I 100% agree with that. But you would be amazed how many parents just drop the kids off practice. I mean, they don't do that. And then they get upset when they get to the game, and they're not getting the results they want. But that's to each their own, I guess.
Yeah. Well, So yeah, moral of the story, everyone listening, do your homework, do your research, especially if you're going to put that much time in. So no, I completely agree with that. All right, coach, let's talk about in this topic of finding new ways to learn things. Let's talk about your process of self-reflection. So when you think about identifying areas that you want to learn more about or get better at, like how do you kind of go through that process as a coach of identifying those areas? Like what does that reflection process look like for you?
At the end of the year, which it's now in Oklahoma, all the state championship games are all done. So nobody's playing right now. So I feel like this is leading into March Madness. This is that time where maybe you get a chance to recharge and reflect. I mean, I think you look at your team. I think you look at some of the weaknesses you had. For us, we struggled a little bit shooting the three ball. Didn't shoot as well as we'd like to. I think you go back and you look at your. I consider myself a big analytical guy, but you look at your stats and rebounding, things like that. Um, I think that this is a great time of year to work on some fine tuned points as far as like with March Madness. I love watching March Madness with just like a blank notebook of, man, I'll record things because when you get a chance to watch all these teams play and they have their best stuff, like this is their stuff, like their tournament, like their sets they run, and you just try to go through and personally I like to look at the sets that teams run, and I may not have the personnel that they do, but maybe come through and see what might help us get something there. That's where I usually at this point of the year, what I like to do with the time with the March Madness and all.
And are you looking at it through the lens of thinking about what you maybe want to work on or improve from last year, or is it just like you said, kind of like blank slate, just trying to like take in ideas of any sort?
I really like to look at things that we tried to run last year. We tried to incorporate some Zoom action. I know it's popular in the college and NBA and some of the pistol action off the sideline break and things like that. And you look to see like what kind of teams are running similar actions to that. And then I always like try to look at breakdown drills. I'm big on breakdown drills. So like if I like one of the sets they run, I think College of Charleston ran like a double curl or something like that the other day. I was showing yesterday. I think I was showing my son on that. I think of like breakdown drills. All right, so how can we break that down? If that's going to be an action we're going to incorporate in some sets, maybe add on to what we were run last year, then what are some breakdown drills so we can get some game-like shots with that action incorporated? And that's kind of, one set, and I could be an hour thinking and think tank and trying to just draw different things up. But I think that this time of year, that's the best thing to do. Personally, I don't think you're going to get a chance to watch anybody practice. I think you're going to see a lot of just the game stuff through April, and I love looking at sets like that and seeing how we could break stuff down and I don't know, come up with some new drills. So you're not running the same drills that you ran last year, but combing through it and seeing what applies to what you have personnel wise and how you could build off what you already had. I really don't try to blank slate it. Unless I just know I'm graduating a whole bunch of guys and we're just going to be totally
Start
different.
over. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's or you're going to a new program or if you got a new job and maybe it's just a complete blank slate. I think, like you mentioned, you've been at your school for 6 years. I think when you're trying to establish, I think the guys know kind of some things that you want to do, and that's probably what the approach I would have. How can we build? I'm not saying you won't change things, but how could you build?
Yeah, and with that, for me, I'm just kind of like thinking with adding on to some ideas to that. Like I kind of go through that process of I love looking at whether it's March Madness or even stuff that's at like high school state championships and seeing what other programs run and try to think of like the group that we have returning the next year and think like, okay, like I have an idea of what this group is probably going to be like, or what this group probably is going to have as their strengths and their skill set, and then kind of think like, all right, like what sets do I see that are going to lend itself to this particular group I have coming up, and how can I, put this particular player who I identified as a shooter, and how do I incorporate them into like, ooh, something I saw that I really liked in this set, and kind of thing, and kind of do that like, okay, how do I see my team and fit into this particular set that I see happening. So no, I completely agree with that. It's kind of like that. Try to picture my players in that position running that set, though, because it is high school girls, just maybe a little bit slower. Not as fast as what I see at a college basketball level.
No, I mean, and even so much, you know, people say, "Oh, the NBA is tough to watch." You know, they don't play any defense. I love the NBA. I mean, aside from the NBA runs so many set action, just actions, and you just love ways you can incorporate that action into
Hmm.
something, whether it be a baseline, sideline, or something like that. But yeah, of course. I mean, you tailor it down to your program. I mean, of course, I don't have these. I'm not a roster full of D1 guys either. So I mean, we just got to tailor it to try to make it fit for our kids.
Hmm. Yeah, no. So when you get that set, or you find those couple sets that you really like you mentioned, you really work on like the breakdown part and really try and think of a way to, put that into a format where you can like drill that and really kind of teach that. So what's that kind of like? You talked about like the think tank a little bit. How do you kind of take a set that you like and then put a plan in place to kind of break that set down and then try and teach that and run that with your team?
You know, I like to try to get an action, um, and then I like to try to. I'm big with having about 5 or 6 sets so we can come off that action,
Hmm.
counters and things like that. And whatever it is, like I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with like the pistol action
Sure.
that teams run.
Yep.
We go through and we'll have a pistol shooting series where we do everything, every option, where it's the handoff or it's the handoff and we go into a flare, or if it's going to be the fake handoff and the guys can get immediate ball screen, or we even added for our playoff run, which we actually got a couple good looks late, where we come off of a drag with the trail guy coming in, and so the guy fakes the handoff and comes off into a drag. I mean, a double drag. It's those kind of things. I love breaking things down like that.
Hmm.
I think you can get a lot of reps. I don't know about your team makeup, but we don't really have a kid. I mean, we're kind of like, I guess if you're going to say positionless, I don't have like a 6'8" kid who's got to be a center or something like that. They're all about the same. I mean, so if a kid gets caught having to run the post or the trail, I mean, they all got to know all the positions. And so, yeah, we just break we just break that stuff down as many times as we can, whatever action it is, and go from there. Try to get as many game shots as we can. I'm big on trying to rep the type of shots that we're going to shoot.
Sure.
I really just don't like shooting shots just to shoot shots. And some coaches talk about shooting 5,000 shots. I mean, I'd rather shoot 1,000 game shots at game speed versus just 5,000 of just random shots. That's really not going to fit what we do.
Yeah, I've always had that, and I've talked to other guests on that, and then there's been other discussions I've had about that, about my thoughts on, getting on like the gun, or the Dr. Dish or whatever, and just like it could be helpful, it could be useful, but then I always wonder like what's the game like application on that. And I know some coaches do a really good job, who can make that game like and make
Sure.
that work, but it's kind of like getting shots just to get shots up. It's like, but like shooting is never really done in isolation, right? It's always done in conjunction with something else that's happening as well. It's a whole
Right.
process of getting a shot up, right?
Right. Right. Absolutely.
So is there like a limit in terms of like how many sets that you're gonna like pull down? Is there a certain like, all right, well, I can only, you know, take down a certain amount of sets, and I only want to get X amount when and implement those with my guys, or implement these wrinkles? Or is it kind of like, hey, however many I can take in and is however many I'm going to try and teach? Or what's that process of, how many you want to maybe incorporate or learn or try and break down?
That's a great question. I honestly feel like at first that's dependent on your team,
Hmm.
and how well they remember that kind of stuff. You know, I've had teams in the past that could run 70 sets. I got teams in the past that can't spell 70 sets. And so it goes back and forth on that. You know, I mean, like
Yeah.
I do like to start the season, probably. God, I think this year we started with about 8 or 9 sets to the preseasons, things like that. I think we ended up with about 45. But you just incorporate through the year. Our seasons kind of broke down with some breaks, Christmas break, and then we have our schedule had about a week break in February, which was good to kind of give us a little bit of time for our playoff run. And you just kind of take your actions and you start building a little bit. And then probably towards the end of the year, we added a few things that weren't on any films in case we needed that late, because we do have several coaches on our schedule that they'll scout you on everything. And to have something in the bag that's not on film, we try to work on it and then bring it in late in the season.
Yeah.
But I think I would think, imagine, I don't think any coach tries to get out there with 100% sets early. I think you start small and you kind of build. I mean, there may be a set that looks great on paper, and it looks great when the Lakers run it or somebody like that, or Duke runs it. But God, when high school kids run, they just find a way to screw it up and it doesn't work. I mean,
or it even looks good at practice. And then you see it actually try to be run in a game situation. Like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah,
I've been there.
Absolutely. Yes. I've looked at a play a couple times like, yeah, it's not working. And it doesn't fit us. I thought it would, but it doesn't. And so we usually just disregard that. And then, but honestly, like we try to run a lot of things off actions. I mean, that way the kids, I can technically put 5 sets, but it's really one set with just 5 options.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not having to remember 5 completely different sets.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
That's way too much. I think that's information overload, right?
Right. And I think the more you make your kids think, I think the slower they are. And I can't afford my kids to be slow.
Yeah.
And so we try to make it as effortlessly flow into whatever we're trying to run as best we can.
I can't tell you how many times I've even told my girls, like, I want you to play. I don't want you to think. I just want you to play basketball.
Just go play. Right.
Yeah.
If we run this action and this happens, this is what we want you to do. If this happens, this is what you need to do. If this happens, what you need to do.
Yeah, I've told this before, I've had more than a few instances of girls who've had pretty much wide open looks, but it went against the spirit of the play, so they passed it out or did something else, and it's just I look back on it now and I laugh, but it's just like, but coach, that's not the play, that's not the action we run. I'm like, well, we're trying to score actually, so I mean, you had a wide open look there. I'd prefer if you took that, but it's just funny how sometimes it's great that they're listening, right? I'm glad that they know the set and they know the play, but sometimes they can lose the overall objective of like, we are trying to get the ball in the basket at the end of the day, sort of thing.
Yeah, that question is, hey, is this an option? Yeah. Hey, did you bump it off the glass? Yes, it's an option. Yes, it's an option.
So you're a big, also in terms of learning things, I know you're a big clinic, you're a big camp person, and besides like running them, I know that you're big on attending clinics and camps, and I love the amount of information and the amount of discussions and amount of really good things that come out of those. So when you're attending a clinic or a camp or somebody who's speaking, what are your goals out of that? Is there something that you're definitely trying to get out of each one, or you just kind of take it as it comes and every clinic or camp is different? Like, what's kind of your philosophy when you go to these sort of things?
Man, I tell you what, early in my career, which we're talking about 20 years ago, I had an opportunity to go to a Nike clinic in Tunica, and it was loaded with unbelievable coaches. I mean, it was packed. They had, and I think as a young coach, it was easy to get overwhelmed. I mean, because a lot of those coaches, like Roy Williams, spoke at that clinic, and of course he was going to talk about secondary break, but he wasn't. I mean, you have some, you can tell some of the big names. They're just they go out there and they're going to tell you a funny story too, and then they're going to maybe give you a thing or two, and that's about it. Some of the non-bigger names are some of the best speakers. I can't remember her name, but she was the girls' coach at the University of Texas. And this was on the Saturday. She was the 8 o'clock speaker on Saturday morning. And we had already gone there that Friday night session. And I imagine a lot of people probably stayed up gambling the night before because it was at the casino. And there weren't a whole lot of people there. But I was young. I hit every session. And she was one of the best when it came. She talked about culture. And I mean, I think as a coach, I think you're always trying to learn a thing or two. I mean, I think that's kind of the golden rule when you go to these clinics. I think I could have learned about 4 or 5 things from her when she talked about building culture. I know it's a big buzzword in a lot of programs, but she was phenomenal. And to say that, I mean, this is also the same clinic that had Bill Self, Gary Williams, Roy Williams, Hubie Brown, Coach Huggins. Like, this was a loaded lineup, and she was awesome. And I think that I you have to take with a grain of salt some of these guys and what they're doing. I mean, because again, they have different courses than we do at the high school level. But I do think that you try to learn some things. One thing I've always enjoyed, and it seems like I get this everywhere I go, is I'm impressed with how all these college coaches or even the NBA guys, the terminology, like they have terminology for everything. I mean, everything. And that's one thing that I've been envious, and I probably need to do a better job as a coach. I mean, they have a word for every action on every spot of the floor. And I'm thinking they probably have gained that through the years of experience, and or they've just sat down that way their kids know when they say the dunk spot, or they say this is the slot, or they say something like that, their kids know, their people know where exactly that is, and when they give a specific word for an action, they know exactly what's expected. I know it sounds elementary, but I've noticed that in all the clinics I've ever gone to, how I've always been impressed with terminology. But that's something I always try to pick up. I mean, how are they naming this short corner? How are they naming this elbow? Or how are they naming whatever spot they're talking about or action that they're talking about? I always find intriguing.
I imagine that has to be, if you could pick up things like that, that has to be super helpful, even if not just like teaching during practice, but also just in a game, just to be able to, say a couple words or say a couple things and just have that instantly, like your players instantly know it, and you can just like quickly communicate with your guys or quickly say something or pull somebody during a free throw and just, mention a couple things, send them on their way, and then it's like done. And it's just like such a concise, easy way of communication.
Right. I mean, like if you're in a 30-second timeout and hey, we're gonna run a pistol action in the slot area, right? I mean, pistol action in the slot area. If the kids know the action with the location, it's not, hey, we're gonna hand off over there. Well, where's over there? Over there is, I mean, you're in a huddle over there. It could be a lot of different places on that court. Now you're having to spend some of your 30 seconds trying to determine, versus if they know the spot, they know the action, then it's a lot more clear, precise communication, which is crucial during games, especially late in the games when you don't have a chance to redo that.
Yeah. Those 30-second timeouts, you don't got a lot of time. So just be able to say a couple things.
I'm telling you, you don't. Another clinics I like to go to, or I have in the past, COVID really screwed a lot of those things up though, but this was pre-COVID, was the PGC clinics. Oh my gosh, those things. I had the great fortune to go to one in Denver. And they had like 4 sessions per hour. I was just networking with people and like, hey, take notes. I'm going to exchange notes with you. I mean, it was phenomenal, the amount of information, and it can be overwhelming, but those were in the spring. I think I went in May. It's a good opportunity to try to put some stuff, some key things that you want to add. If you want to add terminology, if you want to add some key words, to get that added before you head into your summer season with your kids, and then that bleeds into your off season and when you come back to school for the high school, that's big. But I really, coaching clinics and everything like that, I love going to those. I can listen to those guys all day. They're usually really. I never understood. I think the day I try to stop learning as a coach, I think I actually had a conversation with my superintendent the other day, and I told her, I was like, the day I stop learning to be a better teacher or coach, I'm out. I'll do something else. I can't just stay where I'm at. I have not reached any form of pinnacle, and so I'm trying to find a way to learn and grow. If I don't, then I'll move on to something else. I think I owe it to my kids.
Or somebody's got to pull the plug on me if I think I got all the answers or something. Somebody's got to tell me it's time.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And I think, just going to your point, one of the things I really, enjoy about these clinics and everything, I find super helpful is just the conversations you can have with the other people who are attending them. I think just like having that connections you can make even with the people who are attending and that you're talking to who might be in a similar boat than you, or just to like even pick some ideas about them. Like it's just an amazing, I've said this many times, I think basketball coaches are like the best community to learn from in terms of like all the sports, because I think they're just so giving and so willing to like talk and help each other and share ideas and questions and frustrations that like I don't know, I don't know any other coaching community that's quite like the basketball one. So that's my little toot to
No,
the basketball community in general.
no, 100%. I think that, man, we don't invent the wheel, man. No, nobody here is inventing the wheel. Like we all thieve from. I mean, we're thieves from everywhere. Like I steal from here. I've had coaching relationships before where the girls coach. A couple years ago we ran a nice side out of bounds play to beat one of our
Hmm.
rivals with like 2 seconds left at home on senior night. It was great. Play drew up just like we ran just like we drew it up at the buzzer, goes in. The next day, the next Monday, I was on Friday night. The Monday, the girls coach comes over and was like, draw that play down. Like explain to me what you did there, because that was a good one. And I love that.
That's
I love
awesome. I love that.
watching. I remember being a JV coach on a JV bus, and I have the whiteboard, and I hand it to the JV girls coach, like, draw up your favorite play. What's your favorite play? And just start those conversations with people, and maybe you learn a thing. I mean, you never know. It's one thing here, one thing there, and maybe you start to build. I mean, just trying to learn. I think one of my favorite coaches, my college coach, Coach Hoffman, who's at UCO now, he said he always say growing up watching this guy coach, his camps, he'd always tell you, you're like a sponge.
Hmm.
You throw yourself in the water. Water's the coaching community, and you soak it up. I mean, you just soak it all up, and you take in as much as you possibly can. And I try to do that in the environments I try to put myself into with the clinics. And you're right. I mean, you meet all kinds of people at those clinics, and they're there to learn too. I don't think anybody. Very few times I've ever had anybody big dog. Why are you asking me this question? Like, who
Yeah,
are
yeah.
you? Are you a college? They're there to learn. I mean, and a lot of times they'll welcome that. I mean, some of my best conversations happen. Went to another PGC clinic in Dallas, and it was the after conversations in the
Yeah.
hotel bar area till like 2 in the morning. I mean, you get coaches of like 6 or 7 in a table, and we got our notebooks out, and we're just going around asking, "Hey, so what do you do for this? What do you do for discipline? What do you do for culture? What I mean, because culture is big for all programs, but what do you do for communicating with parents? What do you do
Hmm.
with troubled parents? What do you do with kids that I mean, what do you do against teams that switch screens? I mean, like it just endless on some things that you can do, and I feel like that's the kind of development coaches I think I would hope want to do. I mean, that's if you're here, you might as well be the best you can be,
And
right? I
there
mean,
really is so, I don't say so few, but if you really do like think about it as coaches, it could be a very isolating profession where like you could really feel like you're on an island, kind of like teaching, where you don't really, you have people that you might check in or talk to once in a while, but if you don't, especially if you don't have like a lot of, mentors that you keep in touch with, I just think it's so nice just to be able to get into like a conference room, we said like the bar or something, and just talk in person with other coaches, and just know that you're not going through any of this alone, or you're not the first person to deal with this or have these sort of questions. And I think that even something as simple as that, to know that like whatever it is you're going through, other people can share in that experience, and you can have that face-to-face conversation, could be just so vital, and something that you know you might not be necessarily picking up at a clinic or the camp that you're going to, but just have that camaraderie, and just to be able to know you're not alone can be like so reassuring to go to one of those clinics or camps and talk to people about that sort of thing.
no, I mean you're 100% right on the. It can be isolating, especially if you're having a rough year. I mean, and yes, your circle can be very small, and I definitely do encourage. Yeah, I guess if there's some young coaches listening, the mentors. I mean, get you a
Hmm.
good mentor. I have a couple of great mentors that I can call, and I know that I can be 100% open with them. They're not trying to get my job or anything like that. it's a because your circle is small when you're coaching. I actually had that conversation with my young assistant a couple months ago. But it's yes, to have people that genuinely have no problem investing in you, helping you, that's big time for you.
Yeah.
And you might meet somebody at the clinic that becomes a lifelong small circle person,
Yeah,
especially the
absolutely.
ones like if you go to Dallas, something like that, maybe somebody in Texas, I mean, or somewhere in neighboring state or something like that, I mean, that you keep in touch. I mean, that's a beautiful thing about social media and things like that. I mean, you get to meet interesting people. I mean, it's how we met.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So
That's how, and and I've said this before too, for all the annoyances of COVID, I think one of the cool things, at least in the basketball community, is man, there was just so much cool stuff out there happening over Zoom and everything during COVID with coaching and all that. So that's like the one nice positive I take out of that is at least there's a lot of real good Zoom sessions and coaches exchanging ideas and still willing to do all that during COVID. So that part was
yeah,
at
I
least
agree.
nice.
Yeah, it was good.
So you go to these clinics, right? You're sitting down in March Madness. There's these sets you have, your clinics. You have a lot of people talking, a lot of people exchanging ideas. But of course, you as a coach, you already have things that you believe in, or things that you have established that you're not willing to change, or your non-negotiables. That's English, so to speak. So how do you kind of like balance kind of like taking it all in and then parsing out what's actually useful for you and like filtering it all out so that you're not just bombarded with information and you just kind of take what matters and you can kind of disregard stuff that might be like irrelevant to you?
Well, I think that goes back to I think you have to, which I think as coaches we naturally do this. I would think you go back and reassess. So the reassessment of your year, and you try to find some weaknesses, like some things that you guys struggled in. Maybe it's a certain action you didn't score very well, and so maybe you want to discard that action and you want to try to incorporate new. Um, and I think that you try to look at, I don't know, if you weren't a very good defensive team. I mean, I forget who I was watching the other day. I think Maryland yesterday at the very first game of the tournament. And they were talking about Maryland's matchup zone.
Hmm.
We tried to incorporate a little bit matchup zone this year, which is not something I've ever done as a head coach. My assistant coach brought that into the table, and it worked out good for us. So I was really intrigued by that game to kind of see how Maryland was trying to guard in their matchup zone.
Hmm.
And then actually my son and I were there watching. So those kind of things, I think you try to look and then I don't know if it's something you think it will work. Then you do your work outside of that. Like there's all kinds of information, whether it be Twitter or, I mean, even actually, I mean, TikTok's got a ton of things that you can search on, whether it be via breakdown of a certain concept defensively or offensively or anything like that. Um, and you just start to build up, kind of a plan that you kind of pick what you want to improve on, and then I mean, because again, the spring is important for us. I don't have a lot of players in the gym, but I want to try to have any kind of idea what I want to try to improve on going into the summer. That way, anytime I get during the summer, if we do like a little boot camp with my guys before we go into our camps, if there's a new action I want to try to do or something like that, I like to try to run it during the summer. That way we get some reps in a game like situation before we incorporate like a complete thing in the fall.
And I think to that point, one of the things that I kind of can get the sense of in hearing your response is there's definitely things that you as a coach feel comfortable with, or that you are uh believe in as part of like your offensive and defensive system. And I know that one of the temptations, especially as a younger, newer coach, especially if you're struggling, is wanting to throw everything away, start from scratch, especially when there's all this stuff out there on social media. But I get the sense from you that there are certain aspects of your coaching philosophy, whether it's culture or on the court, that you are you're very fairly secure and fairly confident in, and you're not going to just blow things up or throw things away year after year completely.
Yeah, I think, man, I think that if you scrap from year to year, it's going to be hard to build any kind of like continuity growth. I mean, unless again you're going to a school or something like that.
Hmm.
I would like to think that this last year was our first year really incorporating kind of matchup zone. that maybe next year we're a little bit better in it. Some of the guys that logged in some good minutes kind of have an idea of motions like rotations and things like that. So I would like to think with some extra work in the summer, maybe some extra breakdowns and some different types of breakdown reps defensively, that we become more efficient in that defense. And maybe which allows us to maybe change up and add a few wrinkles, whether it be various traps or things like that. So you to grow in that aspect of it versus completely changing it now, incorporating a whole new defense where you're having to go from bottom up. And I think that also translates in offensive schemes as well. I mean, I think we'll do a lot of the same transition up the side in our actions. I think we'll run some of the same motion offenses, and we'll just look at maybe some different wrinkles off of whatever action we're running, and just start to build it. We'll try to throw some of that action stuff. Maybe I see a couple nice new sets in the tournament or something like that, or in the NBA playoffs. Like I said, the NBA is great for grabbing a thing or two.
Sets, yeah.
Especially end of game situations. Yeah, end of game situations is, I mean, they run a ton of sets.
Yeah.
But it's kind of where I take the off season in the spring.
And to your point, you mentioned this about your defense. I think that's something that's really important, especially again for coaches who might be new in a program or who might be younger coaches, is that if there's something that you believe in offensively or defensively, like you have to be willing to commit to sticking through the process of it for a few years and really watching it grow and develop. And it's going to be frustrating, right? That first year, it's not going to look the way that you want to, but if it's something you believe in and something that you know is going to work, you gotta ride out that process and let it work. And that's kind of like something that you were just talking about yourself.
Right. I think you as a coach, again, you have to assess, you have to look at the growth.
Mm-hmm.
You have to ask who, like you said before earlier, who you got coming back. Does that skill set you have coming back have potential areas to grow if you were to continue with that? So like if we put in a matchup zone defense and we show some defensive indicators that were better, do I have some of my best defenders coming back next year? And will one more year of running that, will that help them become better? I think those are the things as a coach you have to go back, reassess and weigh and see it. If the defense didn't grow from when you initially put it in to the end of the year, I don't know. Maybe you do scrap it. I don't. Or if you're returning only all of your offensive guys and your defensive core left, you either develop over the spring, summer, or maybe defense is not going to be one of your cornerstone. I don't know. That goes back to the coach and assessing their team and their makeup of the team.
Do you? I guess let me reword this question. Have you made many significant changes in between seasons in terms of what you like to do culturally, or how is your philosophy on team building and culture kind of changed throughout the years? What is there anything that you like to look at or do during the off season to kind of change things up from year to year with culture?
So I'll tell you this one thing that we did this last year, which I don't know if it was completely productive, but my first year at my alma mater, I've always been a defensive guy that switched everything. Again, I've never really had the big post kid that if we got caught in a switch on the perimeter that would cause us put us in a bad spot. But I really felt that last year it made our guys soft, like not physical, because in practice we're always switching. We're not fighting through screens. We're not trying to,
they're just kind of going through it,
connected. Yeah, we're just kind of like, hey, switch, and allowing gaps. Well, so this year we changed our defensive cover. I mean, totally changed it. We on ball screens, we stayed connected on the player receiving the ball screen, came over the top, and we try to employ a drop coverage, taking away direct drives, but dropping the guy lower than the pick and roll offensive guy. But we stayed connected. And we changed to try to be like, you know what, you're going to get hit. I don't care. Get your arm bar on the guy. Ride through it, because we're not going to be soft. We don't want to be physically soft this year. And I don't know if that helped. I mean, honestly, if you're going to put truth serum in me next year, are we going to switch? Or are we going to do the same? I had to go back and again look back. I think we were a little bit more physical, even though we weren't like physical, like guys who are just tearing it up on the bench or anything like that. But I do feel like we tried to change that. That was a culture thing. I wanted kids who were tough, physical players. From some of my better teams in the past, I had a team that was pretty salty a couple years ago, and it was because of the fact that Kelly, I think that they were more physical. They were
Okay.
they were physical, and I think the last year's team we didn't have that, and that was something that I felt like we had to do different. And I think probably start off this summer, we'll probably do the whole drop coverage still. But that is one thing over the 10 years I've been a coach, I've switched most of my years as a head coach until this year. So we made that change.
And so it's interesting, sometimes how those observations can come out. Like you can just like watch it and just be like, maybe you just see something like that, right? And you're just like, what, we got to change this up because you just don't like, mentally what that looks like, right? Or just the way that the player's body language maybe almost like looks like for doing something. And if that's the case, then like you said, that there might be a need to like switch something just because it's maybe doesn't jive with like the culture that you want of the program, and just switching was just something that, like you said, right, made it kind of like mentally soft, like they were just kind of going through the motions, and it was better for them to kind of tough it out and fight through it. That's really interesting.
And honestly, to going back to what I told you about reassessing, is we gave up 4 points less this year than we did last year. Now, this year we had inept ability to score, which caused some problems. But defensively, we held really we held several good teams to lower than their season average. Mm-hmm. So I think defensively it did make us better. And that's where I'm like, I don't think you make a change like that in the middle of I think that's one of those things that you look at the stats, you look at how could you improve. You look at ways that you're going to implement this. I mean, I think you do a lot of that drawing up in the spring. If you do happen to have some of your kids in the spring, then that's fine. You can start to implement it then. But then I think you work on that in the summer. And then because like in Oklahoma, we have football. We have a lot of football guys that will play. You may not have everybody on there. And so you take advantage of your summertime. And that's when you start to try to implement things like that. That way you have at least a legit shot of it being giving it your best run. Yeah. So I do think that we were a better defensive team this year versus our switching year.
Those stats
so I think that we will try. Yeah, and we just couldn't shoot. I mean, shooting is definitely one of the things that when we go back to the drawing board, we're going to have to develop. And I've talked to my younger kids. I was like, if you can knock down, shoot it, you're going to have a head up on a lot of kids in our program this year. Yeah, there's a place for you on there with minutes waiting. But defensively, I thought we were okay. It gave us a lot of chances to at least have a shot.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any expectations for your guys who are returning about what you want them to be doing and working on or learning or going over in the off season? Or like you mentioned, you have a lot of your guys who do football or other things. Is that expectation there, or what do you kind of want from them in this period?
Man, I tell you, the main thing that, again, going along with, so we made the switch defensively this past year, and my core of our squad's pretty young still. Our main focus is weight room. If there's one thing that I've noticed watching these AAU tournaments and these kids who are that are top of whatever class they're in, and these kids look different than they did 10 years ago.
Full-grown adults, it looks like some of them.
Well, I mean, for one,
or maybe they are. I don't know.
Well, I do. I mean, they're reclassing like 6 times. I mean, I jokingly told my assistant that day, I'm gonna have a freshman one day leave our practice and go vote. I mean, because he's 18 years old or something. I don't know.
I was gonna say, Coach, you might have some eligibility left. I don't know.
Maybe I could reclass. I mean, they just But the kids are different built these days. They're the days of having guys that look like Kevin Durant that can barely bench 185 coming out of college. Those days are not there much. I mean, I got a chance to watch last weekend just an 8th grade, 7th grade NXT circuit event where kids look like goddamn high school players. And so I think that that's for us is going to be big is the weight room and trying to get my main guys bought in on that. And I think they will be, and that set that culture standard to be, we're going to be. So on top of changing our defensive strategy, we are going to also try to aid that with being physically stronger. And hopefully that'll help us continue to improve in that area as well, along with shooting.
Hey, get
I don't get a lot of shots in the summer.
And get those legs stronger too. That won't hurt the jump shots probably. Build
Right.
up that leg strength, right?
I mean,
It all works.
no, I mean, there's 2 shots every kid wants to do, a dunk and a 3. I mean, so some of these kids
I like
never get
that.
a chance to dunk. So then you're going to have, okay, well then let's figure out a way to, I always joke with my kids. I mean, I want shot makers, not shot takers. I mean, everyone can shoot it. I mean, I can shoot it now. I mean, but we want shot makers. And so, yeah, we give them a chance to get better at that as well.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. The dunk and the 3, right? And I guess for
Right,
my
that's it.
girls,
I mean,
I think the dunk might be out of the question. So we put up
sure.
some more 3s, I think. But no, you're absolutely right. And it is really interesting. Like there are some programs who seem to be allergic to the weight room and others who it's a huge fundamental part to what they do. And I really do think you notice the difference between the ones that value it and the ones that don't.
Right. Oh, I agree. Yeah. There's not a lot of time here that probably sell out really hardcore to improving the overall athlete. I mean, because at the end of the day, we've got kids that play multiple sports, and the chances of them, the percentage odds of them going to the next level is, I mean, it's really small. So you want to try to give them the best opportunity to be successful in whatever sport. But it's the athletic director of me coming out, right? That you want them to be successful in football if they play, baseball if they play, basketball, and give them the best chance. It's the best chance. That's really what you want. And so that's where I do feel like the weight room could be a huge asset to athletics in general.
I had a coach, tell me that once about girls. There's a few girls coaches and myself talking, and one of them was, was really, really big on the weight room. And there was a couple coaches, asking about it or questioning it. And, the coach was like, at the end of the day, like, even if, these players don't go on to do anything, past high school or whatever, like at least they understand the importance of going to the gym. And if they can keep that habit up in their adult life and understand that it's important to go to the gym, like that's good enough for me. And I was like, that is a good point.
Right. No, I mean, I know a lot of people try to measure our success on that win-loss record that year, but really, I mean, hopefully your kid comes through, your players come through your program, play 4 years, and they leave your program with things like that, the weight room or other cultural things you've instilled. And 10 years from now, they are still winning. Now, it doesn't help you on your win-loss record 10 years from now. But I always enjoy guys who come back and like, hey, coach, I remember, because you know that you've had an impact, and those, I think those are successes. Now they don't help you win state championships at the time, and they don't go on any kind of evaluation or anything like that. But I do think that those, as from a coaching side, are small victories, big victories, really.
Those are championships in their own right, I would argue. Those are
right. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. To wrap up, Coach, a couple questions I ask every guest. So go ahead and get started here with this first one. Thinking back on your coaching career, what is a moment from your coaching career that you think others listening would be able to learn from?
I think looking back, the coaching business can be very, very tough. A lot of times things happen, and it's out of your control. And I think you, as a coach, you have to try to make the best of the exact situation that you're in. Whether it's sometimes having to go back as a head coach, maybe back to an assistant coach level, or you missed out on a job that you didn't quite get. I know that I've had that. I've had situations like that, and at times it's a struggle. to adapt. But I do feel like you trying to be the best coach that you can be at the school that you're at with the kids that you have is huge. I think in big picture, career wise, um, I think that you know I've heard before like where people are always trying to get the big time job. I think the big time job is the job that you're at the moment,
Yeah,
and
I like that.
and I think it's important to try to excel however you can, and try to be as good as you can when you're at whatever level you're at.
Yeah, it's kind of like that old adage, like wherever you are, like be there, sort of thing. And I like that a lot. Awesome.
Yes, yes.
To wrap up, Coach, I give every guest kind of what I call a 60-second soapbox. Feel free to go longer though, because I never will time you. But it's your platform to kind of get out kind of a final message, a closing thought, a final idea, something that you want to leave the listeners with. You can kind of take it any direction that you want. So I'm going to kind of open up the floor to you, Coach, and I'm just going to let you take it from here.
60 seconds. I don't. The coaching world seems to be hurting right now with the lack of coaches. I think in education, I don't know how it is at your place, but it's hard to find coaches, and it's frustrating. When I started in this business, I remember applying for certain jobs, and even to be like a ninth grade coach at a 4A, 5A school. My first job, there were multiple applicants. Now you can't find applicants. It's hard to find applicants for an assistant coach. And I guess in my soapbox, really doesn't have really too much to do but coaching as far as in education in general.
Yeah.
I'm really fearful for the direction of things and how they're going. I mean, and I don't know the answer to it. I mean, you see it with officials. You can't get officials because either lack of funding or the treatment of officials. I had to officiate a JV game a couple of years ago because they have officials, and this was for a 5A, 4A game, and that's tough. To find coaches to be able to fulfill your staff, it's tough right now. We're having to deal with a lot of lay coaches and coaches that maybe do other kind of jobs full time just because the money's not in it. I mean, I know that I know that you're probably not trying to get rich teaching or coaching or things like that, nor am I.
No.
But
Yeah.
it is frustrating when, we're at a big school and to not be able to find as many people as you need to give every kid an opportunity to be successful. And I don't know what needs to change. I mean, it's probably a lot of layers to that. There's probably a federal layer, then a local, state level, but it's frustrating from the coaching side. And because now I look out, and I mean, I can look at the coaching job boards, and there's not nearly as many applicants as there once was just 10 years ago. I mean, I'm fixing to go into year 22 on this thing, and it's tough. I mean, we're having to fill teaching spots with people that aren't even in the education field.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why things are falling apart the way they are. Why are we having problems in the classroom, or why are we having problems in the court in the athletic setting? Well, I mean, you're talking about, I understand if there's a guy that does a little bit of AE coaching, that's great. But I mean, I think there's something to be said for someone who goes through the training of going through school and trying to be in the education background, and then having those mentors around that know a lot of those scenarios. I mean, I have some good people I can call I can ask all kinds of education questions. If you're coming from not the education setting, that's tough. You don't have that. You don't have that circle, and then you wonder why some things happen, and it's tough. But I love coaching. I love the relationships that I've been able to build professionally, and it's been a joy. It's been a joy talking today.
Yeah, no, it's been great, and I will co-sign that. We're one of those areas here in Arizona, Coach, that's hurting too. We need qualified people in all aspects of the education and coaching world. So, whatever that needs, whatever needs to be done to make that happen, we got to make sure that we got the right people in the classroom and the right people coaching as well. So, completely agree with that. And I just want to say thanks for coming on here and talking about kind of your reflection process, talk about your program, your values, clinics, things that you like to learn, the sets and the things you got going on in the future. Best of luck as you continue on that coaching journey, and hopefully you find some good sets here for the playoffs and March Madness and everything that you could use, that you could put in next year, and maybe get some more shots up and up that field goal percentage as well. So Coach Litherland, thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Coach. Thank you.
And thank you guys so much for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.